I was working with a coaching client yesterday, and she had just mentioned that there was a certain word um, that really just gets her back up. And I think we all have those. And I think one of the things that we do is we kind of, whether it's in caucus, which is a private conversation, in mediation, or for negotiation, it's like behind closed doors, or if it's a
Hmm.
facilitation or a training, we're trying to get people of what makes it a big deal for you, and why is that? Because we're trying to figure out, going back to the little mediation training here, Jeanette,
Yeah.
that we look at what makes long lasting settlements, or what makes longer lasting agreements,
Right.
we use the lingo of what gets people to buy in, or I just say what gets people to follow through with stuff that they
Right.
agreed
Right.
to. And
Yeah.
I going into the Wayback Machine. Do you remember like the three levels of satisfaction? That I love your face. Okay, so this is a pop quiz. There are three levels of satisfaction for durable agreements, and it talks about that there has to be substantive satisfaction. And there has to be emotional satisfaction and procedural satisfaction. So
Oh,
substantive is
wow.
like it's tangible. What do they want to get out of this meeting? So it might be like we want an agreement about X, or a process, or an agreement to terms. And then procedural satisfaction is I felt it was an equitable process. I felt as though we had
Right.
equitable participation, which I view as
Right.
like, were you able, did the structure of the process and how the process was executed make you feel as though you had the opportunity to talk about what you needed to talk about and agree to, attempt to agree to what you needed to agree to? And then the last one is like the emotional, of like whatever emotional things we were bringing toward this, is that resolved to some type of level. And I also say in my media, it's like, I hope whatever emotional baggage you brought to this, that you can set that down and move forward with your life. So it's along the example that I was taught, and I think this might do it, is like, if you want to go to a restaurant, you want like a good quality meal at a good price and good service. So the meal is the substantive, the service
Yeah.
is the process, and I think I'm getting it mixed up. Okay, what did I say? So the price is like the
Emotional. Is that the emotional part?
I think
That
it's
you
more
feel
the
like you
it's like
valued?
it's substantive, because well, you want a meal, but the price you want to pay, the service is the process, and oh god, I need more coffee. Okay, there we go. So let me backtrack and just say, if any one of those is off, you're going to go, well, it was a good meal, but it was too pricey. So the meal might be
Correct.
the process, and the price was a substantive. Or you could say it was a great meal, great company, beautiful restaurant, and the service was
Service
crap.
sucked. Yeah.
So we do all of that in our life, and it's just a lens. And so sometimes when I'm preparing for conversations, I'm looking at how can I address what people need? How can I design and execute a process where they feel it's equitable? And what kind of emotions are people bringing? What kind of emotions prop up? And how can we kind of get some level of um, feeling as though we're moving through those sticky
Yeah.
things, so people aren't getting stuck in the vortex of pissed off or anger or resentment or disappointment, or yeah, so those types of things. I'm sorry I couldn't articulate it
Yeah.
better, but do you kind of
So
so
I have, yeah, go ahead. I wanted to talk about this one time when I called you because of, so again, in my household, I set up a process that my daughter and her best friend on a cabin camping trip had to go through. And I called you and you're like, it's not about the cheese, Jeanette. It's not
oh
about the
it's
cheese.
let's just pause, because there was a setup. You did the setup. It kind of, it was like going the background. It wasn't at the event. It's like, let's go back 3 days before the camp out. And by the way, that's one thing I always look at for conflict resolution: of where does the story start for the person, and how long
Yeah,
is it? And then you're like,
yeah.
and she melted down, and it was
She
just
so
crazy.
did.
it was about the cheese. And I just said, it's not about the cheese. So can
Right.
you kind of set that story up for folks? So
Yeah.
give an example of interest
Yeah,
and intent, and
exactly.
also what we look for about
Yeah.
conflict.
So this had to have been 2017, maybe the summer of 2018, because it was before COVID. And I went to a cabin for a super long weekend. I think it was at least 5 days, over with a Saturday and Sunday with my daughter, who would have been, 11 at the time, and her best friend, Vivian. And I was trying to teach my daughter, so I thought, what it would mean to be a good hostess. And so, as much as I could, I was trying to be gracious to Vivian. And so, would serve Vivian first with pancakes, or, like, what, how you cut things and kids want to, choose which side gets cut, which of the cut they get, like if there's a cake or something
Yeah.
like that. And so then Vivian started getting in the habit of like grabbing first because she was the guest, and she was, feeling very loved and very gracious on this. This was the longest time that she was going to be with us as a guest, not just as an overnight or something like that. And at the very last day, I set out all of the sandwich making, and we were going to get packed and check out, but I set all the sandwich making things out on the countertop and told the girls, go make your sandwiches, and there's chips, and blah, 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 grapes, whatever, I'm being mom. And yeah, my daughter just absolutely loses it because Vivian takes the last slice of American cheese. Now, there was other cheese, but she took the last slice of American cheese, and that's really what my daughter wanted. So I pulled my daughter off to the side, like, what is going on? And why are you having this huge reaction? And I'm having a reaction as a mom. I need to get out of this cabin by a certain time. And Vivian's just like, how did you turn into a demon? As she's eating her sandwich with the last slice of American cheese. And so I call you a couple of days later and I'm like, hey, do you have time to talk? And so I tell you about this whole long story. And you just kept saying, it's not about the cheese, right? It's not about the cheese. And because I was in such a mom space and not in my negotiation headspace or my mediation headspace, I was like, no, it was about the cheese. Like, my daughter was rude and just lost her mind about cheese. And you're like, no, she actually didn't. And so we had this phenomenal conversation. This is why we need other people that we can talk to who are safe, who can sort of reel us back in and say, okay, get out of the mom headspace, look at this more neutrally as a conflict and what had happened. And that's really what you helped me see, is what was going on that would cause my daughter to just absolutely flip out at always being second on this, what was supposed to be super fun cabin camping trip.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about that. There was kind of like the autonomy, and then also, I mean, that was such a
Yeah,
rich
very much so.
conversation. One, because you were upset, and I was laughing and losing, and just like it's not about the cheese. And going back to things like like my more teacher thing is like the cheese is symbolically significant of something else. And you and I talked about this, about what type of assumptions and protocols are we imposing upon people,
Imposing.
and how that can cause conflict and resentment and explosiveness, and then also how people react to it. So that's kind of one of the things that I think we do, and the importance of having anybody who can listen. And I mean, it's not that we don't judge people, because we do judge people, but we kind of suspend commentary until people get a chance to talk through what's important, and we can be compassionate, um, and we also can like raise the it's not about the cheese, or we know each other well enough, or if people have mentors or somebody outside of their of the circle that's going to advise. We don't need advice and judgment, but is there someone who can say, I'm kind of calling you on this, I'm going to be direct, I know enough about you that I can see how your approach probably was an ingredient in this mixture. And I think that's one of the things that any type of problem solver does, is like, what are the personalities and the approaches, how are they adding to the mix, and how did we get there? Because it's generally not a one-time transaction. at work or negotiation. There is a history, and we are learning and thinking people, and we bring all of that history and our own bias and our own goals and our own BS to
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.